Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the September 17th Finance and Audit Committee meeting. I'd like to first recognize we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk today will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. And welcome to Councillor Armstrong, who's attending electronically this morning. So we've got a full house. Given the absence of anyone else in the chamber, I'm not going to worry about reading out any warnings about good and bad behavior. I think, Ms. Gurry, we're safe to do that. The Finance and Audit Committee meeting is being held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. Introduction of late items, we have none. A motion for adoption of the agenda, moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favour, any opposed? None. Motion carries. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated, moved Councillor Hemmons, seconded Councillor Eastmere. All those in favour, any opposed? None. Motion carries. We have no presentations, no delegations, and we are on to reports. And the first is Nanaimo Builds for the Future Plan Update. Mr. Lindsay, please.
Good morning, Your Worship, Council. Good to see you all. This is, if you recall, it's been about a year since we were in front of you with what we've called Nanaimo Builds for the Future. We tried on a couple of agendas to have this discussion in the early summer. I think we were at your FNA in July, and then we just got pushed back because of the size of the meetings. And I think it is good because there is a fair amount that we want to go over with you. And we want to leave some space for good discussion on this topic. So happy to be here this morning. I'm going to make just a couple of comments and then I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Mercer, who's going to kind of lead the team through the presentation, and we're all here to answer any questions. Of course, I just wanted to note, since we were last in front of you a year ago, there's been some fairly significant changes, including changes at a provincial level around long-term borrowing, rules around long-term borrowing. As a community council, supported the acquisition and announcement of our South End Community Centre, so a very major step since we were together on this topic a year ago. And you also provided separate direction on how to proceed with the Public Works project. So we're here today to give you an update on those provincial changes and how they could impact the work we do. Give you an update on those major capital projects and some of them that you've given us previous direction on, and then we're also here to seek support on next steps on these major initiatives going forward. As outlined in the report, there's really, there's been a number of factors in our building of this plan that we've had to consider, but I would say the major ones are, taking into account the IAP priorities, those priorities outlined in City Plan, making sure that we're fiscally responsible not only in the short term on these projects, but in long term, having a long term view on the horizon of other major initiatives and requirements that the city's going to likely require long-term borrowing for down the road. We recognize now that, we've always recognized, but we're reinforcing the need, the reality that investing now in design buys certainty. I think some of the questions and criticisms we had with earlier estimates was because of the level of, or where they were in their evolution of design, is we had large contingencies. And some of these projects where council supported us on actually going further in design is going to allow us to reduce contingencies. And then finally, Your Worship, just having projects ready to go. We're seeing more and more from senior levels of government with grant opportunities coming forward. They're looking for projects and initiatives that are ready to move forward now. So I think investing in projects and getting them to a point where we're ready to go is an important step if we want to be eligible for those grants in the future. So those are my really quick comments, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Mercer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lindsay. Ms. Mercer, please, the floor is yours.
Good morning. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is the borrowing legislation changes. So on Section 178 of the Community Charter governs rules around short-term borrowing for municipalities. So short-term borrowing is defined as having a repayment term of 5 years or less. So under the changes to the short-term capital borrowing regulation, the city can now do short-term borrowing totaling $14,979,450 without electoral approval. So this is an increase of almost $10 million from the previous limit. So this is not debt servicing, but the full amount of borrowing allowed, electoral free. So normally we talk about debt servicing, but in this case, it is the maximum amount of borrowing in total allowed without that electoral approval needed. So this value is calculated at $150 per capita, and that's up from the $50 per capita that was previously in place. Section 179 of the Community Charter.
Councillor Gesselbrock has a question.
I was trying to just figure out how the short-term borrowing works. Like, basically, it's just a total, not per project. You can just borrow up to $14 million without electoral approval. And then that is basically just the servicing costs for that needs to be paid off in the 5 years.
That's correct.
And that would just be taxation.
It could be through, most likely it would be through taxation. It depends. Sometimes we will be able to fund some of it from reserves or things like that. But yes, taxation is often, or user fees,
Great, thanks.
depending.
I think just to make very clear, though, for those who are listening at home, the $14,979,150 figure is the amount of money we can spend annually on debt servicing. It's not the total capital.
No, it is that's the total amount of borrowing under the short-term rules.
Under the short term only.
Yes, so it would have to be paid back over 5 years. It makes it confusing because we always talk about debt servicing when it comes to borrowing, and in this case, it is actually the amount you could borrow. So I'll confuse you with the next section because this talks about debt servicing. So under Section 179 of the Community Charter, this governs the rules around long-term borrowing for municipalities. So long-term borrowing is defined as having a repayment term of more than 5 years. So under the municipal liability regulation, the city is able to borrow funds without electoral approval if they are within the approval-free liability zone. And this regulation sets the percentage of allowable annual repayment a municipality can have without needing electoral approval. So previously, the annual debt repayment amount was calculated at 5% of sustainable and controllable revenues. So with the changes, this is now calculated at 10% of those same revenues. So based on the 2023 financial statements, the city can now enter into long-term borrowing with repayment amounts totaling $23.11 million, so, without needing that electoral approval. So once you deduct the city's actual debt repayment of $7.6 million, this leaves approximately $15.5 million in debt repayment room remaining without needing that electoral approval. This allowable amount will be updated once the province reviews and approves the city's 2024 financial statements. So every year this amount will change because the factors going into that calculation change each year. I did check, but they have not. That's still under review. So we should be hearing shortly once they've finished that review. So what does this mean? So $15.5 million in annual debt repayment equates to about $185 million in borrowing room allowable without that electoral approval needed. And this is based on a 20-year amortization period at the MFA BC rate of 4.78%. This amount, like I said, will change each year as the city's sustainable and controllable revenues change. Because taxes are included in that, so that changes every year. As well, the city's actual debt repayment value can change from year to year as new debt is taken on or old debt is paid out. So every time borrowing is undertaken, it reduces the amount of borrowing available without electoral approval. The way that the calculation works is you calculate the maximum amount, which in our case is $23.11 million, and you subtract the annual debt repayments and any guarantees. And that, in our case, rate for 2023 was $7.6 million, and that gets you the amount of repayment room still available, which is $15.5 million. So currently, the city's debt management policy states that all long-term debt, whether it's within that approval-free liability zone or not, requires electoral approval. So as this is a council policy and not legislated, the policy can be changed to have this wording removed, and that's something that council consider going forward. So as you know, under legislation, the city cannot borrow beyond its allowable limits. So based on those 2023 financial statements for the city, the annual debt servicing limit is $57.8 million. And again, that will be updated once the 2024 financial statements are reviewed and approved. So currently, this means the city can have a maximum of $57.8 million in annual principal and interest repayments. This is the max total borrowing allowed, and it includes both the assent-free and electoral approval needed debt. So currently, the annual debt repayment is approximately $7.6 million, and that equates to about 13.1% of that allowable total limit. And that's the end of that section. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have on the borrowing changes.
I'm not seeing any.
All right, we'll hop into the priority projects section. So we have several speakers for the next few slides. Mr. Lonsdale is here to speak to the Public Works Yard and RCMP detachment expansion projects. Ms. Osborne and Ms. Davis will speak to the slides relating to the South End Community Center and the Bevan Park Master Plan implementation projects. And Mr. Sims will speak to the slides for the Waterfront Walkway project. We will start with Public Works Yard update project, so I'll hand it over to Mr. Lonsdale to walk you through those slides.
Good morning, welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Appreciate the warm welcome. So I am back to speak with you again about our Public Works Yard update project. We've been carrying on with the previous direction provided by council, which was to proceed with the highest needs in a single phase option that we had previously presented, which, to say rather plainly, is proceeding with our crew and administration building and our fleet services building, which are the two largest facilities at Public Works Yard that need to be updated. Over 185 of your staff will be working out of these facilities every day once we have them complete. We are proceeding into what's called an integrated project delivery style of delivery for this project. And what that is we bring in contractors, architects, design professionals at the very beginning of design and work with them to get real-time pricing, real-time constructability feedback, work through kinks in design that may cause issues down the line, but get that addressed early and proactively. It's a new system of project delivery for the city, but it's something that has been used quite successfully in other municipalities throughout the province and by many different levels of government and private enterprise throughout Canada. Currently, we are retaining the existing architect that we've been working with for years now on this project, and we have an open public solicitation for general contractor services to join the integrated project delivery team. That's on the market right now, and that will be closing in early October. Once we've selected that contractor, we'll have the start of that team together, and we'll be able to hit the ground running, taking a look at this design, maturing it, and also maturing the cost estimation along the way. And one of the nice things is we'll be moving away from cost estimation and moving into actual pricing, contractually enforceable pricing. So we'll be able to take away the large portion of the contingency that's previously been associated with this project and has brought the cost estimates that we've had to the level that we previously discussed.
Councillor Gusselbrook.
Thanks. Just with the IPD process, the contractors got brought in. They're like the solicitation for the participation. They're paid for just participating in the design. There's no contractual obligation for the contractors that participate in that portion for actually doing the construction, or is that usually part of the process as well?
Yeah, if I may, through your worship, Councillor Gusselbrook, the contractor that's brought in at this stage, they will be paid for the work that they're doing now, the same as we'd be paying, our engineers and architects and that sort of thing, because they're going to be doing quite a bit of work, but just office-based work as opposed to construction work. And then throughout the process, both the city and the other parties in the contract have effectively some off-ramps out of the contract. If we end up in positions that just don't work for the city, we don't want to proceed, or it's just not making sense for the contractor, But generally speaking, the folks that come in at the start of the project are the ones that are going to be finishing it. As I said, they're providing us with reliable pricing that they're willing to stand behind and do that construction work for that pricing. So as long as, you know, relationships are maintained and things go well, we certainly want to stick with them because that's their pricing and they're the ones that are able to supply the work for that price.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So our goal.
Councillor Brown.
Sorry.
Thank you. Just building off the question of Councillor Gesselbrock, with the off-ramps that you discussed, the question emerges, is there like a timeline in which this is a better approach, or if there's like uncertainty if the project's going to proceed, is this the approach to use?
Yes, so if I may again through your worship to Councillor Brown, the off-ramps are built in at milestones through the project, and so once one of them that we've got built in is when we come back to council and present our findings. If council directs us to go in another direction or to not proceed with the project, that's one of those contractual off-ramps that's built in. If council directs us to proceed, then we're able to continue on at that point.
Okay, thank you. And just a quick follow-up is, how much money do you spend to get to that point?
So again, if I may through your worship, the amount that we had estimated and has been allocated by council is $1.8 million to get us to a validation stage of significantly maturing the project, having good contractually enforceable pricing, and coming back to council with a very advanced stage of design for consideration. We are working towards what we're kind of calling a mini validation at this point, where we're going to be working through a fair bit of the detail and coming back to council as soon as possible within 2026 to update council and to let you know where we're at, how things are looking with pricing and the scope and decision making so far, and that will be part of that 1.8 million that we're spending up to get to that point.
Okay, thank you. And then how long does that validation window kind of stay open, or like?
That's a good question. It stays open within the contract. It stays open until we've reached certain milestones within the contract of deliverables, of tangible things we can put on paper, put it on a table, and say we're there. We're at validation now, and we're going to be going and reporting to council. The timeline associated with that it's hard to say without having a contractor on board, and also without the city having worked through this process before. That mini validation, like I said, we're hoping to get back in early 2026. At this point, I'm tentatively looking at maybe March 2026. And then beyond that, maybe 6 months or so, we're going to have to kind of see where we're at and the level of production we're able to achieve along the way.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Please.
I kind of ended up addressing the rest of the discussion there. Our intent is to sit down with these folks, start working through this process, and then get back to council as early as we can. Like I said, reasonably, we're shooting for March 2026 with a advanced design, not fully completed, not fully validated, but worked through. And if at that time the direction is to continue to proceed, we would then look at onboarding other professionals beyond the architect and the general contractor, some sub-trades and specialist contractors, as well as specialist engineers and folks like that, to continue through that validation phase.
Thank you very much. Not seeing any further questions. I'm the one who's sick here this morning. You guys are supposed to be livelier than me. RCMP, please.
All right, thank you. So this project, again, has been before council before. This is the first time I've been before council with this project with an update. We have taken a look and discussed different ways to deliver this project with a lot of our internal interested parties as well as the external ones, particularly working with folks within the RCMP's project management department, and seeing what municipalities around the province have done to find success along the way with these projects. And we've kind of come back to my previous talking point here of going through an IPD process on this project. The needs that the city has for policing and the facilities that the city needs to provide to the RCMP in order to meet those needs, we've seen a very interesting kind of mirror held up to that within the city of Kamloops, who started their work on their RCMP detachment project roughly around the same kind of time we did, and they went immediately into an IPD process, whereas we followed our more traditional kind of design, bid, build sort of process and coming up with conceptual plans that's previously been presented to council and associated cost estimating. And it's been very interesting taking a look at this kind of compare and contrast table that I have up now of just how similar those needs are, but how different the associated budgets with the two pretty similar solutions are. So the size of the site, the size of the facility, the age of the existing facility, the nature of policing services that are being delivered to the community are all very, very similar. But then as we kind of skip to the bottom, Kamloops has expended a fair bit more money along the way. They've gone through 3 full validations before they've gotten to a point where their council has directed them to proceed, and they've spent about $4.75 million doing that. We've spent significantly less, still significant funding, but about $355,000. But the estimated cost between these two projects is where that real stark difference comes in. So the validated price for Kamloops has been published at $150 million, including identified contingencies, whereas ours ranges from high $200 million into the low $300 million kind of range. So with this in mind, we've decided to go into that IPD avenue for this project as well, bring on a new set of architects and professionals, bring on a contractor that has experience in our CMP projects and is able to provide us with real pricing as opposed to the more conceptual pricing we get with the estimates, and see if we're able to come up with similar results. We currently have $1.8 million within the budget to continue into that validation stage with this project, and our plan is to use that, and then in the future, if more funding is needed in order to continue that validation, either include that within the city's regular project planning and financial planning, or to come back to council to request additional funds, depending on the nature and complexity of the request and the timing of the request.
Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you. Does the province not have a set design that you can just put into an area?
If I may, through Your Worship, to Councillor Perino, not really. There are other designs out there that we've taken a look at and said something like that could work. Again, as I said, with Kamloops, the nature of what they're doing is very similar to ours. But taking a look at their design versus our, yes, the square footage is the same, but they've gone a lot higher vertical than we've been contemplating. And so there's a lot of local considerations that need to go into it that make it, unfortunately, a lot more complicated than just kind of a copy and paste solution. It would be a lot simpler if we could kind of just pull out a recipe book and say, this one looks really good, let's build this kind of prefab here. But unfortunately, that option doesn't exist for us.
It's just the cost difference is so alarming.
Yeah.
Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Hemmons.
Yeah, my question is regarding the parking, because that's a big concern, and it has been documented as one of the reasons people don't want to come to Nanaimo, because there is not parking. Are we going to start looking at that so that there is parking available? Because it's a job where people really will not take the bus, and with the different shift schedules and stuff, it's not logical to do so.
If I may, through Your Worship, to Councillor Armstrong, yes, that's part of what we're going to be looking at here. Under what Kamloops was able to achieve for their validated $150 million price, that includes improvements to street parking and a parkade for detachment personnel to be able to use. Our current plan doesn't include those kind of amenities, so those are things that we're hoping to include in there, and are not necessarily hoping. We're going to be working very actively to include in there, because it's a basic level of service for the folks that are providing services to the community out of the detachment that's pretty necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, I'm curious about the 4.75 spent by Kamloops on their IPD process and our $2 million budget. And I just want to confirm with you that $2 million is going to get us started, but the more work we do up front, the clearer we have an understanding of what the costs are going to be at the or at the end of the process. So I'm just flagging when we say $2 million to do this process, that's likely under budgeted. We will need to find further funds to refine that and mature that work.
So if I may, through your worship, to Councillor Hemmons, yes, it's good to note that the $4.75 million that Kamloops used was to go through this process 3 times. So they came to a conclusion, they brought it to council, there wasn't an appetite to proceed, they were given direction to explore alternatives. They were able to reuse some of their work, but there was a great deal of extra work that went into it, and that cycle repeated 3 times. Generally, as a guideline, the validation phase of an IPD project, and this comes with a big disclaimer of depending on the complexity, depending on the performance of the various interested parties in how quickly they're able to come to the table with feedback, like the RCMP in this case, the cost of validation is around 2% of the overall build cost of the project. And so looking at it right now, you know, it's hard to say what our overall build cost is when we're working with this range of high 200 million, low 300 million, but we're looking at our neighbors in Kamloops and they're at 150 million, and we're really hoping to work towards a number much more similar to that. But what we're looking at with the current $1.8 million funding for the project is the existing funding that's already been allocated by council within the budget. That is our plan to utilize it for this process. And if that doesn't take us all the way through, then, as I said, we'll be coming back. But it should get us a long way into this.
Thank you. And a follow-up, if I may. By doing the IPD, we're essentially kind of putting our foot down in the project as well. We're choosing to go down that pathway because, as Councillor Brown points out, it only has a certain shelf life. So if we choose to free up funds to do the IPD process, then we reasonably should have some plans to actually do the project when that process determines a number for us.
Yeah, ideally, the intent is being taken to undertake the project in order to complete the project, not to just start the planning on it. We will end up having, you know, plans that are good for future planning purposes if we decide to take that off ramp along the way. But that's not to say that they might not necessarily need looking at again or updating in the future. And certainly, depending on how long those plans sit on a shelf, the associated pricing is going to need updating in the future. We've, you know, seen all too well that prices are not static at the moment. But what this process is doing is giving us a surety for the short and medium term of what we can do with the team that we have assembled here.
Thank you. Just, we need to be very careful about what we put money into in terms of planning, because that's going to determine the projects we choose. Just flagging that. Thank you.
Thank you. In order, excuse me, in order, Councillors Manley, Gesselbrock, and Brown.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm curious, the IPD validation process, when I look at the projected building costs for Kamloops, it says including contingencies. Do we know what the contingency is for that project? I know with our public works yard, it was around 25%. So would it be a smaller contingency based on having more surety?
Again, if I may, through your worship, to Councillor Manley, one of the differences in the contingency of where Kamloops is at with their project versus where the city is at with the public works yard is we're applying a blanket contingency of 25% and then additional contingency for inflation, whereas Kamloops has worked this through to a level of detail that they're able to say, we're not sure about this specific geotechnical element, and we want to assign X number of dollars to it, and that is our contingency for this known risk that we have. And until we've vetted that out, we believe this is the amount of money that's appropriate to carry so that we can address it if that risk becomes realized along the way. So it's that maturation of the project. You're effectively buying knowledge the further you go, and they're at the point now where they're able to point at something and say, I know a lot about this project, but I don't know this very specific thing, and this is a reasonable number to put to it. The amount of contingency at a validated project for IPD is significantly less than the 25% that we have on the Public Works Yard project and that we also have on the RCMP project for its current cost estimating. I don't have Kamloops' number, you know, top of mind at hand right now, But the numbers that I've chatted with other professionals that have worked through this IPD process fairly extensively is it ranges somewhere between like 2 and 7% generally for the build cost is the amount of contingency that you're holding at that point.
So going back to the public works yard, we had a $90 million price tag for that. That included 25% contingency plus a contingency for inflation. Is that correct?
Correct. The inflation and contingency came out to about $28 million of that projected $90 million kind of up to price tag that we had there. So almost a third of that $90 million.
And so with going through this process, we'll see a much finer point on what the price point is, and we'll be able to contract based on that.
Exactly. So as I said, we're buying knowledge every step of the way. And the further we get into it, the more knowledge we're going to have, and the less unknowns there are, so the less risk contingency we need to carry.
Okay, so it could be significantly less than 90 million, or?
That's my very, very sincere hope along the way is as we work through this, we'll know better, and we will be able to say we have X number of dollars of contingency for this item, this item, this item, or we've worked this all through, and we're feeling really good about things. We should be significantly below that nearly third that we're currently at.
Okay, just a quick question. Sorry to go back to the public works yard, but it included a settling pond at Bowen Park. So is that still included in the two buildings because it's related to drainage for the whole facility, or is that one of the additional costs that's going to be paid for later?
So under the city's engineering standards for developments like the public works yard, attenuation and treatment of stormwater is required. And so having taken a look at that project at that conceptual level of design, the decision was made that that retention pond would probably be the most economically feasible option to treat that stormwater and to slow down its flow so it's not all hitting the downstream creeks all at one time. We're going to be taking a look at that decision again as we work through it, but at this point we're looking at the whole project for those buildings, including the servicing required under our standards.
For the stormwater?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks, Mayor, through you. In terms of the IPD process, I'm very happy that we're utilizing this. I think the other way was just inherently very inflationary. But my question is just like, the comments is like, as we go through this process, there's significant more investment up front. So we want to be dead sure that one, there's a very clear established need, and we've got very clear established relative location of where we want it. And I just, reminder with the RCMP detachment expansion, I know there's been several presentations throughout the year on location and ideas of just orientation of buildings, and it switched a little bit, once, I think the initial estimates came back of like one way of doing it were just so high. How nailed down do we have the location in there? And, I think the need has been clearly defined, but I'm just thinking too, this is pretty prime real estate in the middle of town, and are there better locations just to put it to maximize value in terms of residential and those other options?
So if I may, through your worship to Councillor Gesselbrock, right now we're taking a look at two locations, but effectively it's one location. They're across the street from each other. We're taking a look at 575/336 Prudhoe, and we're taking a look at 303 Prudhoe, which is the site of the existing detachment. These locations have a lot of benefits associated with them. They're pretty central within the community. They're very central to downtown. They're also across the street from one of our fire stations, so it's a community use that, is already being delivered from this space and in a lot of ways continues to make sense to be delivered from this space. As we're getting into this project, we're kind of wiping the slate clean of what was done previously. The needs assessments were great, and we're going to continue on with those. But how we're able to meet those needs is what we're going to be looking at very freshly. And does it make sense to build on 575 and 336? Does it make sense to build on 303? Does it make sense to do a combination thereof? Does it make sense to do a renovation of what's already at 303 and maybe some additional buildings at 575, 336, or 303. Like we're going to take a good holistic look at it. But at this point, our intent is to be looking at those two sites effectively as one site, so that we are able to continue to have that proximal access to downtown, to the highway, and to the rest of the community.
Absolutely. I think, in terms of sort of the policing needs and ease, that it's a good location. I guess what documentation and sort of analysis we have, zooming out, is just okay, looking at all the other needs in terms of housing and that particular real estate value of that location. Does it make sense? Could those other things, for the policing needs in terms of proximity and that, be met? But maybe there's a higher order use for that particular area. Have we just done a land analysis? What documentation and process have we done to just nail down that? As I said, I'm kind of coming in halfway through the movie on this project. I'm not aware of any immediately, but maybe some of the folks who may have worked on this previously are able to speak to that a bit better than I am.
Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this project has gone on for a number of years, and there was a point, and I'm sorry, I don't recall off the top of my head if it was with this council or the prior council, but we did have a kind of a deliberate look at where the RCMP building should be across the community, and we looked at the pros and cons of keeping it downtown. We looked at greenfield opportunities, very specific sites, and at the end of the day, the council direction at the time was to keep the RCMP building within this precinct in the downtown. So we've been moving on that direction since that time. If council wanted to step back and go back and re-examine different opportunities, I think that would be a pretty significant departure of the path we're on now, but that's ultimately up to council.
Thanks. I think I do recall some analysis on that. I think, as these projects longer and longer, the time stretched out of it, I think, when we're going to pull the trigger and be like, okay, we're going into an IPD process, there is sort of a timeline that you need to keep to in terms of making it worthwhile and not just spending, $4 million and then changing direction because all of a sudden people are like, well, why are we even putting it here? Is to have that information forefront when we're, expressing the argument to council and to the community. It's clearly show the need, clearly show the rationale for the location, and then that's a solid foundation to sort of continue on with. Let's go and forward and move that. And I've forgotten fully in the rationale of, why right here. I mean, it makes sense, but in the looking at all the other things that we have to pay attention to and just land value and that, I don't know for sure. And I have heard arguments in the community. It's why would we put an expanded RCMP facility right in the middle of the downtown, especially if there's all these parking needs and you're going to have a larger sort of footprint compound basically for parking, when, if we're trying to build walkable, movable cities, dense residential could be great down there, and there's other areas of town that would be much more amenable to parking space and a compound that might not require that quick response. And so those are the type of things that I'm thinking about. Thank you.
It may be worthwhile to, I'm sure we would have had a report, because I recall the discussion or parts of it, recirculate the report, because I think it was pretty clear that this was the logical choice for a whole series of reasons. And in particular, candidly, your police station should be downtown because that's where the people are. And it's people who commit the crimes, with great respect. So, and close proximity to the courthouse as well is another consideration, all of those things. Councillor Brown, Councillor Perino, and Councillor Eastmere.
Thanks, Your Worship. I have two questions. The first one is very similar to that. I would be interested in that because I remember, I think it was 2019 or 2020, there was a presentation made and the question was asked and no analysis was provided. It was more opinions presented at the time. And it was, and I don't recall any analysis being presented other than we've had some discussions in the past about where it should be, and we all agreed that this is probably the best location. And I just contrast that, I think, to some of, when we're talking about fire halls and things like that, where you actually put the data in and said, I found it very illuminating because there was, I think when Chief Doyle was presenting, there was a lot of assumptions. Everyone kind of knew where the next fire hall might be, and then when you kind of crunch the data, it was like, oh, maybe it's not what we thought. And I think that might be a very useful analysis for this particular property and where the location might be. So that, I guess it's not so much a question, or I would just be curious if that analysis does exist. I would love to see it, or at least have it paraphrased and provided to council. And if it doesn't, I think that's a question worth asking. With respect to the IPD process for both of these, are they going to be concluded at or around the same time that council would be in a position to consider borrowing questions in the next municipal election? Like, I guess my question is, will the validation window overlap with the ability to structure borrowing bylaws at the election?
If I may, through your worship, to Councillor Brown, with respect to the RCMP detachment, if we were to, start issuing solicitations tomorrow for it, I don't think we would be even close. It's going to be a long process. We're going to be working through a lot of technical stuff with the RCMP and their various levels of management and control, and it's going to take quite a bit of time. I wouldn't even hazard a guess necessarily in how much time, but it's going to be years likely. With respect to the public works yard, as I said, we're planning on working very hard to get back in front of council in March of 2026, and then council can provide whatever direction at that time that feels appropriate.
And your worship, can I just add that we do, as part of this presentation, want to have that discussion. We do have a slide at the very end that talks about how these projects work, the timing of each, so we certainly want to have that discussion with you today. So.
Thank you. Councillor Prino, then Councillor Easter.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I think a couple of questions. Your last comments have thrown me in a slightly different direction, because when you said to do the IPD today, for example, it would still take years before we were actually ready to hit the go button. Is that correct?
I would say it's going to be a significant period of time once we have a team assembled for the RCMP project.
Okay.
Before we are back in a position to have a fully validated project. So that's not to say that we wouldn't be able to provide updates for council along the way. That's certainly possible and more than likely. But it's going to take quite a bit of time to work through this process to the level and degree required in order to have very sophisticated pricing associated with a mature design.
Okay. It was something that Councillor Hammond said, talking about you want to do the IPD as close as you can to the go button because of the costing, right? Makes sense. But we also know that with RCMP, we have an end date that the province, where we have to build it. It's not an option anymore, right? They tell us you're building today. I'm wondering when that date is. Do we know?
I don't have that date in front of me, but they're going to be partners with us as we work through this process. They're going to be very regularly attending the meetings along the way. They're going to have a big voice at the table as we're making decisions along the way, and they'll understand where we're at with the project. And I certainly can't speak for them, but in discussions with RCMP's project management group, there's leeway available if you're actively working on this and they're seeing this progress and there's a light at the end of the tunnel that's approaching. There's understanding that comes along with that.
Okay. I guess my comment to this is that my hesitation is that are we going to spend money for the IPD today and not build for another possible decade? If we are ready to push the go button today, then the IPD to me makes perfect sense. That's where I'm struggling, because we have so many other projects, as Councillor Gesselbrook has said, on the docket that need to be done. So it's a juggling act. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. Councillor Prino actually sort of covered the question I was asking about, like, when we're actually hoping to start this project. And I know it says 2027, but I feel like council, when we had a discussion about the cost being more than we could potentially bear, I felt like my impression was that staff were going to take this away and come back to us with potential new options. And what this sounds like is like the same general plan. And I don't have a level of comfort with the concept as I'm seeing it now, and you know, we can't, I think some of this is in camera, so we can't really fully talk about the footprint and orientation and things like that. But yeah, I would say I don't have a level of comfort or understanding of where we're going with this project to greenlight even an IPD on it at this point, because I don't think we've had detailed discussions about the direction, and to Councillor Gesselbrecht's point about knowing and having the information to back up to be able to say that this is the only location that this can go. I don't feel confident in that. So at this point, I would question and be really hesitant about greenlighting this process at this point. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excuse me. In my opinion, both the projects that we have talked about, thank you very much for being here, we've talked about so far should be absolute top priorities for this council. And I know there's other important projects and they all cost a lot of money. But in terms of our community needs, in my mind, our public works yard and our RCMP detachment have to come at the top of the table. And I guess I'm feeling a little bit frustrated, Your Worship, I'm sorry, through you, that the longer these projects drag out, I guess the more temptation there is to go back and revisit steps that we've already trodden upon. And it puts us back to square one almost. And I'm not interested in that. We've already taken steps regarding the Public Works Yard and the RCMP detachment, including their locations. And I think the sooner we can nail things down and move ahead, the better. I really like the IPD process as it's been described. And in my view, let's take the next steps so that we can pull the trigger as fast as possible. We can't afford to delay on either of these projects any more than we have to. And after that comment, Your Worship, I do have a question, and that is, to what extent have we involved the opinions and advice of the people most directly involved with this RCMP project, the RCMP members themselves? What advice are we getting from them in terms of this project? How heavily are they involved in giving us their expert opinions on how it should be built and designed?
Mr. Groot is coming in, or Mr. Lonsdale? Gentlemen, no need to wrestle, just...
Good morning, Worship, Council. In the previous information that has been gathered through the various reports and the various reviews, the previous OIC, or two OICs ago, Lisa Fletcher, she had been involved and kind of was the lead in that gathering of information, working with the units, really discussing adjacencies regarding specialty units, adjacency to ground level, where people should operate out of, and then at the same time, considering that growth factor and considering where municipal employees work. So what we've been doing over the last couple of years is we had been working with Superintendent Fletcher at the time. We worked with Superintendent Burton during his role as inspector, but also as his role as superintendent. And now that we have Superintendent Rochette, and he has Inspector Gillespie, and he has Inspector Tate, we've been working with them and kind of informing them of our progress and having them become part of that project team, so that as we review the information that has been worked on, they can validate yay or nay that that's how they'd like to see their detachment operate, whilst also having a new RCMP project manager on board along the way as well. So very long answer to a question, but yeah, RCMP will be involved and have been involved along the way at like all those steps.
Thank you very much. I appreciate hearing that, because I think it's important that Council weigh heavily and value the expert advice from the people most directly affected. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I may follow up just in regard to kind of that, some of the concerns around the information. Part of the IPD process. You've heard Mr. Lonsdale talk about a mini validation, and really what we've discussed is being able to have like that much more refined information regarding the previous work to date and the space requirements and the operational requirements, so that we could have that a better level of information in front of a council for like spring of 2027. So the completely validated and like finalized project could take a while still, but that mini validation, the goal would be to be able to have significantly more mature information in front of council for the spring of 2027. That's kind of what we've been discussing with our project partners, the IPD facilitator, and then of course with the Public Works project being the number one, that's kind of where we're going to be focusing next with that facilitation consultant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Worship, Councillor Armstrong has a question.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I just wanted to add some clarity because I was involved in this back in 2010, because in 2008, council had looked at doing this back then as well. But we're not going to be involved in a lot of that because of the departmental security requirements. So we're not going to get a lot of the information. So we have to put our trust in our project team, which will have the clearance that's needed. As to location, that was done years ago because that's where the calls for service are. And technically, when you look at the area that the RCMP polices, that's central to their calls for service. So there was no appetite to change the location. As well, there wasn't any suitable locations at the time that we could go to that wouldn't be extremely costly, because I believe they can still keep the cells, which even the retrofit was when we did the retrofit was $5 million. So I think we need to be, understanding that our project team is working very closely with the RCMP. They've looked at all these. A lot of the information we're looking for, we're not going to get because it's classified. So I think we just need to put our faith in this. And I'm with Council Thorpe. We need to move on these two projects because the longer we wait, the more expensive it gets. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Great. I think these are all important perspectives about pace and moving forward. I just, like, the wake-up call is, like, ultimately when the public is asked for $170 million or $150 million request, you're gonna be like, why did you choose that location? Why is this needed? Why is it like this? And yeah, there have been conversations in 2010, why it should be here. I do recall some, and I did recall agreeing, like, yeah, it's 2025, conditions do change. The majority, probably 99.9% of the public, have no clue about the discussions that happen. And I just think that when we are going to proceed with a project, we need to make sure that the information is very clearly laid out for the argument of why we need this and why we've chosen this location before we put $4 million into proceeding with building it. Because the worst thing that happens is that we go do all this work and the narrative is not out there that why we need this, why we choose this location to expand it to this point, and we get a huge public backlash, and all of our work and understanding blows up in our face. And I think that it's just good process. And so what I'm asking for is just like, could we please just have the clear reasoning why we're doing this thing so it's laid out and easily accessible for people so that we can confidently go forward with this much needed, community service. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on the detachment? Any further questions? All right, thank you very much. Councillor Manley, sorry.
Yeah, I just have a question. I think at some point we were talking about trying to get some assistance from the province for a project like this because of the growth in the city, and I'm just wondering if there's any possibility of getting assistance from senior levels of government for a major undertaking like this.
Through your worship to Councillor Manley, I think as part of the process, it really will become, part of the question will be like what grants or what funding is available at that level. I do know that as part of the municipal policing unit agreement that we have with RCMP, there is a clause in there that talks about contribution to significant projects. So I believe that as part of this project, as we go along and we start to get that information that is much more solid, those discussions would kind of be happening along the way as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Done with the detachment? Thank you. On to the South End Community Center. Ms. Osborne, Ms. Davis, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Council. I'm going to assist the
Spoke
team
the
with
same.
this one. And if I might have some IT help with advancing the slides, please. Here we go. Thank you. So, Council, you've been hearing from our staff on 2 other projects that are significant. And one of the interesting things I have in my new role is both upstream and downstream roles. And infrastructure plays a critical role for us in both keeping our community served with the basics, water, sewer, operations, and another piece of that is social infrastructure. So the South End Community Center you know a lot about. Through your investment, we now have land acquired that was announced on July 7th of this year. So we have a location. And this is probably one of the projects that embodies Council's endorsement of City Plan and Reimagine Nanaimo. It's something that touches on pretty much every goal that we have. So from a connected to a healthy to a prosperous Nanaimo, infrastructure like this can advance the city. So what we're here with you today is to ask for your consideration of funding to advance to the next stage. So right now, we have a community that has been long underserved when you look at equity throughout the community for different civic facilities. A fair bit of work has been done on engaging the community to find out what they need, and you've seen some concepts around that that have been fleshed out. The cost that you see here is what's called an order of magnitude cost, technically level D. And what we're looking to do is refine that and come back to you with a more refined cost that could then line us up for funding, being shovel ready. And one of the things that we're looking at quite closely is how the IPD process is proceeding for the 2 projects you just heard about. And that will help us determine if that's the right process for this in order to get those costs. So the costs you have here really do relate to the scale and the options we'll come back to you with on whether the project is ranging in size from 55,000 square feet or 45,000 square feet, 55,000 square feet, and up to 65. And the cost, the order of magnitude you have right now is on the higher end, and it will all depend on the different functions that are included, embedded in that facility. So I'm just going to advance the slide here. So Council has invested in the location. So we know this site. It is in the Southgate Secondary Urban Center. It is in an area that is rapidly densifying. There are many multifamily seniors congregate care in and around that center. And the lands that you see there that we've acquired include 150 11th Street, 104 12th Street, and then a parcel on 98 12th Street. And the idea there is that the parking that we're currently leasing back to aged care will eventually be relocated on the 12th Street site and that land transferred. So you can see that parcel of land that has been acquired for this purpose. Big investment for the South End. Much needed, and some of the things that this could feature, and I'm going to update this a little bit with some of my conversation, and I was lucky enough to be involved in some of the engagement work that happened back in 2022 that involved a variety of stakeholders, both government, nonprofit, Nanaimo First Nation, and as well input from the Neighborhood Association. So this center, and we have 3 different concepts that we can move forward on, will include things like an indoor walking track, dedicated childcare. That's a really essential one when we look at needs in our community, economic development, social purpose, potentially library space, potentially RCMP space. And one of the things I'd like to, Ms. Osborne pointed out, is for context, the Oliver Woods Center, which is the last major community center we built, is around 30,000 square feet. So when I'm mentioning functions and the ability to meet a range of community needs, this is recreation plus much more. And so one of the things that you see here, another important piece is a dedicated black box or performing arts space. We've heard from Ms. Osborne, the 55 plus games, all the amenities that we attract and that every day our communities use, but then also our visitors can also come to. And our arts and culture have been an important part of that. So this is just high level. There's actually many more ideas and concepts that can come from this. And yeah, what we're looking for is to respond to any of your questions you might have about this. And I think I'd like to end with a book I'm reading. It's by Eric Kleinenberg, and the librarian in Paul River gifted it to me. And of course, it speaks the importance of libraries as civic space where nobody has to pay to go in. And it's called Palaces for the People. And it speaks the importance of community and social infrastructure in being a protective, resilience building space for community, whether it's disaster resilience, but it's also about community connection and providing spaces for people of all ages, abilities, genders, diversity, ethnicities, to come together in a space where they don't have to pay $10 for a coffee, where they can gather and interact and have shared health, recreation, and social connection. We know that social isolation is a key factor in our mental health and well-being. This center gives us a chance to build on Beban and Bowen, and also our recent success up in Westwood with accessibility, and build all these lessons learned into this to meet the needs of the community. And with that, we are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'll just start by saying this is such an important project for the South End community. I just feel like this is a gift that will continue to give to those residents for decades to come. So it's certainly very important. The piece that I was thrilled that you talked about was the library, as well as you've got health care. I'm just wondering, have we made any contact with Island Health as far as building a primary care center similar to the one that's across from the Country Club Mall?
Through the chair, you'll realize I've been here a few weeks. There
Yes.
have been extensive conversations for years on this one.
Okay.
And one of the things that, should council approve the funding to proceed, it would allow us to flesh out in more detail partnership agreements, leases, and all those different components that then would determine the options we come back to you with.
Okay.
This is also the type of project, and I'm referring back to Mr. Lindsay, that by getting through to a higher level of design, moving beyond our concepts, means that we could be shovel-ready, and this is the type of project that can attract federal and provincial funding, as well as the partnerships.
Okay.
Sorry, that long-winded answer.
No, that's good. But the other piece about those, for example, library, like a primary healthcare center,
Yeah.
those kinds of, so the lease sorry, I should have gone through these. The payments for those areas, would that help to reduce the cost?
Through your worship to Councillor Perino, yes. And I will say that there are some things that are more advanced than others in conversation, so I'm going to be a little bit coy, but dedicated primary care space has been a fundamental piece of the conversation about the evolution of this project.
Excellent.
Childcare space as well.
Good.
So this is why this is a true community center concept in every sense of the word.
I mean, besides the primary health center, I'd love to see a lab, those kinds of, yeah, thank you. Excellent.
Thank you. In order, Councillors Thorpe and Manley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Bhopal Singh, thank you very much, and my apologies, I had to leave the room briefly there, so I missed part of your presentation. A very exciting project, as Councillor Perino has pointed out. One of my concerns about this project, though, has always been that it might try to be all things to all people. And I see the list of potential features that it could include, and I know we could add on to those. And I guess my question is this: as we proceed, and I hope we do, and details are fleshed out, will there be opportunity down the road for further community involvement and feedback on what they see as priority features for this building?
Through your worship to Councillor Thorpe, there already has been, and there would absolutely continue to be.
Right.
That's an essential part of the success of this space and how it works. And then we also have the ability to continue to engage with the Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusiveness and other people who can guide our how this evolves and how council considers options.
Great, thank you very much.
Councillor Manley, then Councillor Gesselbrock and Councillor Brown.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I love the multi-use aspect of it, because I think it does meet a lot of different needs for an area of town that doesn't have a lot of those needs met. So I think that kind of, like, getting a lot of things packed into a community center makes it really makes it a community center. I'm curious about we talked about housing attached to this, and I noticed in the report it says BC Builds is oversubscribed right now. Do we know how far out BC Builds is with their oversubscription, their demands? Like how much longer would we be waiting to get in a queue for a project?
Through the chair, I'm going to turn to Mr. Lindsay to see if you might have that response.
And to be honest, Your Worship, well, first of all, we hope to have them here in front of council in the near future to be presenting to you generally. I don't have an answer as to whether their funding will be reinstated next year or beyond. I'm not sure what the long-term plan of that program is. Our comment in the report, and thanks for noting that, is just putting housing on top of a building like this would so fundamentally change how we approach the design. We really need to make a decision. Without a partner, do we advance that or not? And some of the thinking into that is there's other opportunities for housing around here in this area. Do we focus on making it a community building and rely on those other properties for housing? Also keeping in mind, we toured a number of facilities in the Lower Mainland looking at the specific opportunities where there was housing and facilities together. The majority, I'll be honest, the majority that we saw were on smaller recreational facilities that had more of an opportunity for towers above. So having a footprint of this size and putting residential above, certainly something that could be done. It's just unusual compared to what we're seeing elsewhere. And because it would impact everything from how we look at parking, building access, property access, the suggestion at this time is just to focus on the community center, but happy to take council's direction.
Right. Yeah, I thought like affordable housing might have different parking requirements than a commercial development, and which would require underground parking and higher costs. And it is true there is lots of room for additional development out in this area. So thanks.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks, Mayor, through you. Just a question, you know, I think the vision and the possibilities for what could be done at the site and the benefit of the community, it's very clear. Just looking at like costs and the string of other capital projects that we have to consider, are there possibilities of like phased developments of these? Like, do you have to put in, is it just cheaper to just put in a large building and then fill it up, or can you build it so that, yeah, we can just keep adding to the back end as we kind of need stuff, and you know, it's like logistically, like financially feasible to do that? And yeah, because we've secured the land, which is I think the most important step, but I'm just curious if that is possibilities.
Through the chair, and I will also defer to any of my esteemed colleagues here, that is absolutely possible, and I think that's one of the considerations with options, where now it is a fairly, I don't want to say constrained, but it's a limited site. It's not huge, but there is the ability based on the different functions, and Ms. Osborne reminded me that, and I hope I can emphasize there has been extensive engagement with the community about what they'd like to see here. And then also through Reimagine, a lot of that feedback came through. So there is the opportunity to, when we come back, should council approve us advancing this, the concepts and design, to look at costing that potentially could determine whether it's a one-story building, a two-story building, and one with a bigger footprint that can be phased over time, depending on the functions, So, and then also our funding partners and agreements, if we're able to advance that, would also highlight that piece. And so the funding before you today to take it forward to a higher level of costing and more reliability in the options and costs, we'd be aiming, if council considers this, to come back to you in early 2027 with looks at what you might want to consider funding within those options. So long answer, I think so, but I will look to both Mr. Sims and Mr. Lindsay to see what their thoughts are.
Your Worship, just really briefly and simply through Councillor Gesselbrock's question, the larger project you build, the generally the less your square foot cost is. So if you're building a smaller project, you have a higher square foot cost. Your total value might be less, but there's certainly inefficiencies in building it in phases. But it is a possibility, and I think council needs to consider how affordable a large investment would be versus several small investments. But there's an inefficiency in cost, so you're not getting perhaps the best value, irrespective of whether it's affordable or not. But the best value is building the entire project at once. But over time. I think that's the point, is that the square foot cost goes up the smaller you build, relative to, and then there's the additional costs of coming back to remobilize and the disruption to previous phases and so on and so forth.
The perennial choice, a lot of pain now, or have the pain slowly stretched out, but it's more, more in quantity over time. I guess the question too is just like, given the size of the cost and it being a recreational facility, there is, talk about having aspects of it put onto a referendum. And I guess, like, just looking at, if we're going to spend $1.3 million from a strategic infrastructure fund, could something be ready for a referendum at the end of 2026? It doesn't sound like that. It would be 2027 before the options would come back, which could extend either it going to the referendum in 2028, or if it's not as big of a price and there's smaller chunks, it could be something that could be done without a referendum. And so I think these are just things that we have to consider in the size of it. But I think the larger build most likely will have to go to a referendum, get at least the vibe that we're feeling right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown and Councillor Hemmings.
Thanks, Your Worship. Two questions, I think, and I always struggle with these. Well, one, like, I'm highly supportive of this project, so the South End definitely needs a facility like this. So, and as someone who's lived near Oliver Woods and used Oliver Woods, it's great. But I always get frustrated because, like, when I was a young lad, I can remember we could use gymnasiums at schools and fields, and it's just like, it blows my mind sometimes that some policy decisions just result in gymnasiums sitting empty every night, when if anyone's tried to book Oliver Woods in the evening, it's like impossible if you don't have an existing spot. So my question, though, the black box, I ask because, one, gymnasium, I know that gymnasium space could fill, so I'm just curious about that black box concept is, and hope that could be fleshed out a little bit more. And also, pickleball has made me very mindful of sometimes advocating for separation of uses that I wasn't totally aware of before, just with some of the items around that. And so, I just wonder, sometimes it would be great to have creative space, but does that conflict with the bouncing of basketballs and the acoustics that goes along with that? And just sort of Councillor Thorpe's idea is, like, is there a danger in maybe trying to make this too many things to everybody?
Okay. Through the chair, I'm going to turn over to Ms. Osborne, but before that, I would like to indicate that I was part of a black box submission for funding a long time ago when I had culture, and that was located at the Port Theatre. And there's been some very extensive, good conversations with partners and stakeholders interested in arts and culture. And that has not been an expressed concern. And again, design and good building can ensure that you don't have those conflicting uses. And so over to Ms. Osborne for a little bit more detail. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Through His Worship to Councillor Brown, absolutely through design, there's extensive success in other communities in creating black boxes and gymnasiums side by side. When we toured some facilities in Vancouver, we had an opportunity to see black box in action. And the black box concept provides a higher level ability for performing arts to train, rehearse, and prepare for bigger productions, but it also sets a venue for gathering place and for different exhibitions and other uses that typically spread over into gymnasiums and reduce gymnasium time. So it is a new concept for us here in Nanaimo, but I think it's one that would probably meet several of the needs of what our residents have been asking for. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Worship. I'll indicate my support for this project overall. Two pieces. First is from the library perspective. I will share this is not in the capital plan of the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board. There's a process to get new projects into the capital plan, and so I think if we go down this route, those opportunities will be identified. VIRL is exploring mobile infrastructure similar to what we saw when we did our tour of the Lower Mainland facilities, where people can go and there's a drop box and a locker, and it functions very well. So that's on the VIRL side. The second piece is, if I understand correctly, spring 2027 is when we would have better numbers on the RCMP build, and also early 2027 is when we would have better numbers on the South End Community Centre if we decide to move forward with that. And again, I'm just flagging my concern that we're doing two major processes at the same time. We're going to have two major potential pieces of work that if we don't move forward with, one of those estimates will time out, and we potentially have spent a lot of money on it. So flagging again, just the timing of when these are coming to us, I think is going to be important in terms of our overall ability to accept them or contemplate them. Thank you.
Through the chair, through your worship to Councillor Hemmons, if I might respond, there's a couple pieces like public safety, RCMP space, and library spaces. The word is potential, and through some of the background documents I've been reviewing, the concept of a mobile library was actually identified as part of the options. And again, that still needs to be fleshed out with potential partners around that. So thank you.
I have a question, if I may, for presumably Ms. Osborne and Ms. Davis. Oliver Woods right now, full?
Yes, Your Worship. Oliver Woods tends to see, all of our recreation facilities, as you know, are very, very busy. They are full of a variety of different age groups and activities taking place for a number of hours a day. So we believe in Parks, Recreation, and Culture that we are that we have a facility deficit as it comes to our community's needs. Thank you.
For what it's worth, Council, of the two potential options, there may be more over time, of course, but I would go for the two-level option. It's a better use of land. And I appreciate Councillor Manley's suggestion around housing, but candidly, this place is going to be a bit of a parking nightmare, I suspect, no matter how well we do it, because it's going to be highly utilized. We're one of the 5 fastest growing regions in the country. If you're going to build something in a community where it's clocking in at 2% at the part of town where the growth is so enormous, go big or go home would be my response to all of this. And yes, that may put fear and loathing in the minds of some ratepayers listening to this morning, but candidly, it's not just about us. Currently, it's about those who follow us. So, any further questions about the South End Community Centre?
Through your worship, if I might comment, and it's around access, is one of the things about the Southgate Community Centre and the location of this is it's a mobility hub. And Reimagine Nanaimo is transit-oriented design. It was integrated that way. And so part of the discussions that will happen, should this proceed with council willing, is how that interconnectivity with biking, walking, rolling transit links through to the site. And not everybody may choose to drive, as there's such density in that area. And so absolutely planning for all forms of mobility will be a key part of this advancing. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions on the Tier 1 projects? If not, Ms. Graham, Mr. Lindsay, just say something?
Your Worship, were you going to suggest a break? Is that
Yes.
right? And maybe just before we go there, and just to speak a little bit to the Tier 1 and Tier 2, just for a second, because I want to be clear on this about, and it really speaks to, I think, what Councillor Hemmons was mentioning, is how do you look at all these projects and try to start to prioritize them? So when we talk about Tier 1 or Tier 2, it's staff's recommendation to you of here's where we're focusing right now, and here's projects that our council's asked for information on, that we're happy to give that when we have our Tier 2 presentation, but they're really ones that maybe we think should, at this point, take a back seat until we get further certainty on these priority projects. So it's a good discussion about how do we prioritize these. It doesn't mean that at the end of the day, council won't say that there's a Tier 2 project that's actually needs to go now, but it's just, to be clear, it was staff's recommendation in the way we laid out the presentation. So look forward to continuing that after the break.
Thank you very much. So let's try and get back here at 10:31 or 2, please, everyone. Thank you very much.
Around every corner and under every corner, the city has assets, infrastructure that quietly adds convenience to our day-to-day living. From the pipes that carry our water and wastewater, to the roads that we walk, cycle, and drive on, to the amazing parks facilities that keep us active. We depend on this infrastructure without really thinking about its upkeep. That is, until something goes wrong. In April 2020, the water main that runs beneath Bowen Road broke and burst in a big way.
I don't think there's anything we depend upon in this community more than our water supply. We have dams, we have a reservoir, we have a water treatment plant, we have big water trunk mains and distribution mains, fire hydrants, and all kinds of other pieces of infrastructure totaling $1.5 billion that all bring water to our 100,000 residents. We have to be really careful to plan and make sure that that system is robust and resilient so that nobody's ever without water.
The water main on Bowen Road was quickly repaired, and recognizing that the entire water main was at risk, a plan was quickly moved forward to replace it with the Midtown water supply, a new seismically safe water main built for future growth and expected to last for nearly a century. A parallel and backup water main has also been installed and can be used whenever the main line needs repairs.
When we plan to replace our assets, our underground infrastructure, our facilities, all of those sorts of things, we want to make sure we're future-proof as possible. We're really looking out for the long-term best interest of the community. And so we want to make sure that the infrastructure is resilient, it's hardened, and it has sufficient capacity for growth, for unpredictable events such as earthquakes or wildfires, and we want to make sure that we're protecting the environment as much as possible.
Making smart, modern improvements and focusing on sustainability applies to all of the city's asset management planning, regardless of a project scale.
As our infrastructure ages and it becomes time to replace it, because that's really part of the asset management life cycle, we always strive to replace with newer technology, more effective, more efficient fixtures, or even enhancing and taking advantage of newer technology. So a few examples would be LED streetlights, replacing the old high-pressure sodium, very environmentally invasive, with LED, much more focused and much less cost of electricity. Another example would be the boilers in our pools. We're getting away from the intensive GHG gas boilers and shifting more and more to electric, and still using the old ones as backup. Another great example that we like to point to, it's been really relatively under the radar for the last 10 years, is at our #1 reservoir. We actually, as we fill the reservoir, generate electricity and sell that back to the grid to the tune of about $100,000 a year.
Even with the city's best planning, the unpredictable can happen, such as the water main break on Bowen Road. Planning for the unexpected is one more reason why the city maintains an asset management fund. With $4.8 billion in infrastructure, planning and budgeting for the future is crucial to keep Nanaimo healthy.
So a huge part of planning ahead involves determining how much money is needed to fund the replacement of assets, and the city uses long-term planning to do that.
The city has 3 asset management funds that help with long-term infrastructure planning. One for water, one for sewer, and a general asset management fund.
So the contributions to the 3 asset management reserve funds help to smooth out the impact on property taxes and user fee increases when replacement is needed.
You know, for the last 10 or 12 years, Nanaimo's council's been really supportive in annual contributions and increasing approximately 1% of taxes every year dedicated to asset management to ensure that our funding to replace our old assets remains sustainable.
As Nanaimo is one of the fastest growing cities in BC, the demand on our infrastructure is growing right along with it. This makes long-term planning more important now than ever.
Without that contribution to asset management reserves, we wouldn't be able to ensure that the services Nanaimo continues to rely on and appreciate and enjoy would be able to be sustained.
Starting up a short-term rental in the city of Nanaimo? From marketing to pricing to your business platform, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. One piece that you won't want to miss is your short-term rental business license. Puzzled? We're here to help. A short-term rental is the rental of a living space for a period of less than 30 days back to back. By following the guidelines of the Short-Term Rental Operators Guidebook, short-term rental operators may qualify for a business license without hurting the long-term rental market in Nanaimo. It's also about being a great neighbor. By getting a short-term rental business license, it's like saying, hey, I promise that my guests will have a dedicated space to park in and that they won't be too noisy. This is, after all, a very respectable establishment. To learn more about the City of Nanaimo's short-term rental guidelines, or if you need a hand getting started with your business license application, connect with us. We're here to help.
Terminal Avenue is the gateway to downtown Nanaimo, and whether you're arriving from the north or the south, it's the first impression of Nanaimo's downtown. While the first impression isn't anything to celebrate yet, positive change is underway, growing from the efforts of grassroots organizations and the vision of Nanaimo's community. A better Terminal Avenue gateway is being created. In the early coal mining days, Terminal Avenue wasn't a roadway. In fact, it wasn't even land. It was a tidal inlet and regularly filled with ocean water. Throughout the coal mining days, the inlet was a depository for coal mining tailings. As time passed, the inlet vanished and new land formed. Through the 20th century, Nanaimo continued to grow, and along with it, the city's transportation needs. The corridor of new land became Terminal Avenue and a part of the Trans-Canada Highway, routing travelers through the heart of Nanaimo's downtown. Over time, more and more people came, more cars filled the streets, and we ended up with a highway-oriented Terminal Avenue that we see today. With the creation of the Nanaimo Parkway in the 1990s, a highway that bypassed the city, Terminal Avenue no longer needed to be just an auto-oriented streetscape meant to move cars quickly through the city, and new potential for the area came to light. In 2016, the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association, together with the city and the Ministry of Transportation, undertook Terminal Nickel Reimagined, a process that invited the community to help create a toolbox of ideas to improve the streetscape. Now those tools are being put to work, and that work began beneath the Bastion Street Bridge when it was given seismic upgrades. New art integrates with the bridge supports and adds a moment of color to the streetscape. Another step comes with the construction of a beautified streetscape and park spaces along Terminal Avenue between Esplanade and Commercial Street. Following that, a big stride forward will come with a new downtown transit exchange on Terminal Avenue, which will expand multimodal connectivity in the heart of downtown. And we're poised for a giant leap when Terminal Avenue streetscape upgrades are extended through downtown all the way to Stewart Avenue. Back in 2015, residents were asked to share their greatest fear for the future of Terminal Avenue. That fear? Nothing will change, and the challenge of achieving an active and attractive gateway to Nanaimo is insurmountable. Those fears were heard, and the challenge accepted. Today, we're reimagining Terminal Avenue as a walkable, green, and beautiful downtown street.
And I'm Wish Cycling.
Wish, I have to say, I'm really loving your t-shirt.
Well, I do love recycling.
Stop it. You're gonna make me blush.
Absolutely. Wait, no, not you recycling. I heart recycling. I like you, but I love the act of recycling. I put everything in the blue cart.
I don't know if you understand the blue cart completely. Have you ever heard of contamination?
Oh yeah, that's when your Brussels sprouts touch your mashed potatoes.
No, that's brumotactylophobia.
You lost me.
Recycling contamination happens when things that can't be recycled end up in your blue cart.
Oh, like Brussels sprouts.
No, I'm talking about recyclables, like packing foam or glass or soft plastics. Things that can't be sorted at the depot. If these things end up in the truck on pickup day, then it contaminates the whole load, and then the whole load is trash.
Oh, I don't heart trash.
Exactly. That's what wish cycling actually is. It's putting something in your blue cart and then just expecting that someone's there on the other end to sort it. The truth is, our sorting process doesn't allow for wish cycling.
What was that?
Sounds like the machine's grinding to a halt at the recycling depot. If soft plastics get into the sorting belts, then the entire process comes to a halt.
Soft plastics can do that?
Sure can. That's why your blue card is only for packaging and paper products.
Oh, I see. PPP.
Exactly. Huh. You still love recycling?
I sure do. I heart recycling.
That's my name.
This is a City of Nanaimo storm drain. This is also a City of Nanaimo storm drain. The only thing that goes in this is rainwater. Anything other than rainwater ends up into the ocean, which ultimately affects the marine life. There's many different styles of catch basins. These are just two, but they both collect rainwater. One has a fish stamped on it. That's telling me that it's unprocessed and it goes directly to an environmentally sensitive area. This is the outfall, so anything that you put in that catch basin is ultimately...
Projects Tier 2.
Your Worship, I'll kick it off if you don't
Mr.
mind.
Sims, please.
Good morning, Council. Just really briefly, as Mr. Lindsay indicated, our staff's recommendation on the second tier of projects. We've heard that the first tier of projects from Council's direction in the past have been perhaps the higher priority, considered first. However, as Mr. Lindsay said, that's certainly up for discussion as we proceed. But the Waterfront Walkway, as Council knows, has been a long-standing project. It's been a highly desirable project. It's one of the most popular requests, I think, from the community over the longer period of time. The Green Shores work that was done in 2018, 2019 checks all of our city plan boxes. So it's green, empowered, it's connected, it's healthy, and it's prosperous. It checks all of the boxes. It's a wonderful project, and albeit an expensive project. So we updated the cost estimates that were done just after 2020. We've just updated them last year, and they're in the range of $40 million. So that's not as a large jump. There's an $8 million bond that the Department of Fisheries and Oceans has to make sure that the restoration work that we do takes essentially, and that restoration bond will come back to the city. So I think the timing on the slide, it says 2027, but we would really take council's direction on your sense of the timing of this project. And I think that is all I wanted to say on the.
Councillor Armstrong has a question.
Yeah, in regards to the riparian rates, because I know that there's people that own some that say they will not sell to the city. Is there a mechanism for expropriation on that?
I'm sorry, Councillor Armstrong, I missed the question.
So
there's riparian rights involved in this in order for us to build the walkway, and I know that there's some residents that said they have no desire to sell.
Correct.
Is there expropriation that's available?
Well, Your Worship, I think through Your Worship to Councillor Armstrong, that's the next step in the project is to work through some of those riparian rights questions and the approvals, like the approvals mostly for the environmental side of things, as we are working in the foreshore. But that is definitely the next step. We don't want to.
And then
yeah.
My second question is, and I heard this from a lot of people, it's great to do that, but if most people will be driving to one of the starting points, and there's already no parking at departure base, what would be done to accommodate that? Is that part of the overall cost of the project?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Armstrong, there's no concept at this point that has parking areas built in departure bay for the purposes of the waterfront walkway. It would need to be absorbed by the existing neighborhoods, but really when I say this project checks the connected box in city plan, it really is a viable commuter route between anywhere in Departure Bay or Hammond Bay to downtown and points in between.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Worship. First of all, the question through you to Mr. Sims is how long, what's the distance that we're looking at increasing this by?
Your Worship, I'm looking to technical staff that carries the scale in their back pocket, and my recollection on it is not as sharp as his.
Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Through Your Worship to Councillor Perino. I think you'd be a little disappointed. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but this project is from kind of the Kinhut area to BC Ferries.
Yes.
Ferry terminal, but I don't have that length of.
Okay. The reason I'm asking the question, I'm very familiar with the walkway. I do it quite frequently. Love it. I never see a problem as far as parking. There's lots of available parking, which is, but I think Councillor Armstrong makes a point that the piece at the far departure bay by the ferry, that might be more of a problem, but there's so much along the way that it's very accessible. The reason I'm asking the question is this a project that we could do in a phased approach?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Perino, the way it's currently designed is a lot of foreshore work in the Green Shores approach, so it would be very difficult to phase that in a way that would work with the wave action and a lot of the technical details around how you do a Green Shores approach to something like this. So it's pretty unlikely that it would work well as a phased project.
Okay. I think we only have to look at Stanley Park to see how popular walkways are. I mean, I see people on this. There's never been a time that I've walked this where I haven't seen many, many people there. I just think it's such an important project. It's something that we really do need to do within the next decade, that's for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Manley.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Perino. It's a really important project, and I think in terms of that commuter route from Departure Bay, like folks that want to cycle or walk, it's a lot of uphill and downhill and uphill and downhill to get, and a lot of traffic, a lot of streets with cars that you'd be navigating on, and having been hit by cars a couple of times commuting on my bicycle, I'm not really crazy about driving in traffic, so this would be a route I would be taking, and it's very beautiful. My question is about, we wouldn't go into an IPD process with this, but we could advance the project through the riparian rights, securing riparian rights, doing some of the preliminary work with the Department of Fisheries and things like that. How far are we along with DFO, with SNANAMO, and other interested parties in terms of approval for something like this?
Through your worship to Councillor Manley, so the design of the project is pretty advanced. We were working with engineers several years ago to get to this point and kind of put it on the shelf, and we've had some meetings with Department of Fisheries and Oceans around it to just understand their approval process. That's where that bonding kind of comment came from, of what would be required and that type of thing. But I think Mr. Sims kind of mentioned there's kind of three pieces that would be the next step, and that would be the riparian rights, Department of Fisheries and Oceans permitting, looking at that, and of course Cinnamon First Nation partnership and understanding, because there's Departure Bay is obviously very important to them, and also for the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to be able to permit it, it has to go through a referral process to them as well. So there's some complicated pieces that would be the next steps if we would move forward on this.
Okay. And my understanding is that this is kind of future-proof, the design, so that we're anticipating sea level rise. There will be, the foreshore work is actually to slow down the wave action and to create the environmental conditions for that would be conducive to fisheries. Is that correct?
Your Worship, this is probably one of the most exciting aspects, and personally speaking for the project is, I like to think of this as a foreshore restoration and slope protection project that just happens to have a walkway on top of it. So it definitely will contribute mightily to the restoration of original habitat along the foreshore, as well as protecting against sea level rise, the steep banks along Solaire as an example. It'll protect those from erosion as well, yes.
And it's basically a sandstone or a sandy bank there, right? So in terms of protecting that foreshore, I'd probably have some motivated property owners up above who may eventually lose their property without some kind of protection at the sea level.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, thanks.
My late in-laws lived for many years in Solaire. I'm well familiar with it. The owners, instead of being reluctant to sell, should be grateful that we might proceed with this project and thereby preserve their houses.
Right.
Only you have to look at the north slope to consider what the implications are of building near the water in the old days when it wasn't, how shall I say, looked at from an engineering perspective, geotechnical perspective in the serious way we do now. All right. Nothing further on the waterfront walkway? On to Bevan Park. On to Bevan Park. Please, Ms. Osborne.
Good morning.
Ms.
Last
Davis.
but not least. Bevan Park is Nanaimo's premier parks, recreation, and culture venue, offering activities for literally everyone. You will find some of the city's key recreational facilities and amenities located here, such as arenas, swimming pools, the social center, many sports fields, destination playground, tennis and pickleball courts, basketball hoops, equestrian center, bike parks, community gardens, fitness circuits, golf courses, driving ranges, 2 artificial turf fields, BMX track, and a dog park, just to name a few. However, there is still so much potential. The Bevan Park Master Plan was completed in 2015 as a framework to guide the park improvements into the future. The master plan has been integrated into our city plan and has several integrated action plans hitting the mark. It also hits every single one of our city goals. The master plan proposes to transform the 130-acre park into an integrated year-round destination and recreation campus for park use, sport, culture, and community gatherings. This year, a review of the master plan from the facilities perspective was undertaken, and some of the facility developments listed in the plan were investigated further with a higher level cost developed. The Class D costing for those facilities range between $125 million to $207.5 million. And these are depending on the scope of the work of which is undertaken. And they also, because they are Class D, are very high contingency, hold a very high contingency rate to it. A part of the developing of the cost, the consultants considered various different types of structures that could be used for the various types of buildings. They can be evaluated according to their price and their recreational benefits, and these building types would include from brick and mortar structures to rigid frame fabric structures, and then finally to air support bubble type structures. So we utilized a number of different opportunities as we sort of looked at what the different facilities could be built from. Sorry, I should have proposed that slide a minute ago so you could take a look at the overall landscape as it is. And I'm going to move on to the next slide. Or how about, while I'm here, I'll talk about the variety of improvements that are proposed. And so you can kind of see the park as it lays out now. I did want to note that what we're proposing here in these different structures and added amenities could very much be phased in over the years. What we are looking at are a variety of improvements, including a multi-purpose outdoor facility, which could also be known as a true field house, athletics and sport training center, or a gymnastics or high performance center, indoor activity pavilion, which would be something like a farmer's market or an emergency shelter. There is some need for renovations to the Agriplex barn, and accessibility improvements at Bevan Pool, which are the result of the accessibility audit, which was done in 2021. While we look at the site, we could also talk about a variety of things that could be done to improve the overall movement within the park. We could look at some park beautification through landscaping, addition of picnic and gathering spaces, which is very heavily underutilized right now, an amphitheater, walking trails that link throughout the park, the variety of different amenities and facilities, and paved parking and fencing. What we're looking at would be about 15 acres of proposed structure and would occupy about 2.5 acres altogether. It would leave a very wide opportunity for looking at other amenities or needs or uses over the years. So this next slide is the building number 1, which we just want to have a quick look at. This would be what we would call the field house. And potentially it could be an air support structure, which is insulated with synthetic turf, surface for field sports and other sports that play on turf. It would have about a 70-foot ceiling height, and the turf surface could be converted to hard surface, which would allow for events and multiple sport court type activities. It also could be utilized during the Vancouver Island exhibition for fair and agricultural exhibits and large indoor public gatherings. The second building that we referred to would be a gymnastics type high performance sports center. There is a significant response within our community looking for this type of a facility. Potentially this would be a rigid frame fabric structure that would be insulated and have a 36-foot ceiling height, capable of being a training and competition facility for citywide gymnastics and other sports, as well as specific training to high-level performers. The third building, which we're referencing, would be an indoor activity pavilion, which is visioned as a fabric-skinned aluminum structure, also insulated with multiple access doors along both sides of the building. Then this would function well for a farmer's market type venue, emergency shelter for extreme heat and cold events, and a rentable hall for events such as weddings or similar type gatherings. This is also potentially an indoor facility for pickleball or badminton or sport courts. It functions as well to assist with the Vancouver Island exhibition. Lastly, the renovating of existing facilities. The existing Agriplex barn provides space for equestrian activities as well as fair events. The renovations would be to the roofing with minor structural work and upgrades to mechanical, electrical, lighting, plumbing services. You will see that in action this weekend at the Vancouver Island exhibition. The Bevan Pool Improved Accessibility Audit, I mentioned, completed in 2021, speaks to the relocating of the fitness center with a leisure space and reducing that down to a ground level for accessibility, as well as increasing the accessibility within the hot tub areas. And lastly, again, we would be looking at enhancing the site with the landscaping, parking, picnic areas, walkway trails, riding rings, community gardens, etc. The addition of this service, we did a site servicing survey and can speak to the fact that incorporating site servicing throughout each amenity as it would occur throughout the phased-in process. So the site service plan is all in place. So should council elect to proceed with one or more components, staff would return with further costing and further information on each project. And so what we're looking for today is to learn your interest in moving forward with that. I wanted to note that this weekend, Vancouver Island Exhibition will be on site and are working with the Nanaimo Clippers with their season opener as well. And also note to Bevan Park's amazing activation this last week with the 55+ games, where an opportunity just to see the variety of venues all functioning all at once. So available for any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks. Thanks for the presentation on this. I think for myself, in terms of community need, I think, you know, during the summer months and when it's nice, we've got a lot of assets in terms of outdoor activities and places to utilize, and I think, you know, investing in those is important. Indoor space during those cold winter months is a bit of a limiting factor, and I think, you know, the larger buildings and the more indoor space are the most costly to maintain and build. So I like the idea of the indoor activity pavilion. That's like these indoor multifunctional spaces that, you know, you can have courts in there, people can gather inside, and it's it's protected from the wind and the rain, as the best bang for our buck, just given the expenses of things. And, you know, if anything would be to proceed, I think that type of investment would allow for the usage of the greatest number of people and user groups, and not paint us in a corner for, you know, specific groups usage that wouldn't have the widest impact. So that would be my desire to see something like that happen in the shorter term. Thank you.
Thank you. In order, Councillors Thorpe, Manley, pardon me, Councillors Hemmons, Thorpe, and Manley. Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, staff. I'm curious about the indoor sports field. I feel like I live at Merle Logan with a dedicated soccer player in the house, and I'm in close contact with Nanaimo United people. And just a couple of weeks ago, someone flagged for me that there are funds privately held to support an initiative like this, and I wonder if staff, did you receive any reach out from Nanaimo United about the ability to support an initiative like this at Bevan?
Through His Worship to Councillor Hemmons, I will certainly refer to Charlotte or Ms. Davis in a few minutes to speak to some of those communications, but I can also confirm that over the last 5 or 6 years, we have definitely had communication around how to improve Bevan Park through the multiple different lease and license holders on the grounds. Many of them are very committed to the space and willing to fundraise and or work with us on partnership opportunities.
Thank you.
And further to that, through the chair, we have a great relationship with Nanaimo United, and moving forward we would love to speak to them more about how we're funding this project. We have had communications in the past about their passion for an indoor facility, and we would love to work with them and bring that to fruition.
Great. I guess my question then is, if we're looking at forwarding any of these potential partnerships, would influence which one I think should go forward first. So I think that's just, I don't even know where to take that. But if further conversations are happening in community, that would allow me to make a more informed decision, I think, about in terms of prioritizing or phasing projects here. recognizing that this is a tier 2 project and we just looked at, 150 million for this and 100 whatever for that. So far off in the future, but making sure that we have our ducks in a row, we understand what the community needs, we understand who's bringing money to the table and what that means for our budgets.
Through His Worship to Councillor Hemmons, I'll just comment that through the Bevan Park Master Plan engagement process and through Reimagine engagement process, we have had multiple conversations with many of the user groups on site, and they're definitely, we continue to work with them on talking through what partnerships could look like, and they're all very keen and interested in moving these projects along, but we, respectfully work with them on what it could look like at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, thank you very much, Ms. Osborne. The Bevan Park Master Plan has been kicking around for many years, and it's good to see that we're revisiting it and updating it continually. We're so fortunate to have that space centrally in our city, and it has so much potential for various purposes, and I appreciate all of these ideas. I think they're all wonderful, and certainly it was a very exciting venue, as you commented, during the 55-plus games. My question is specifically this, because I don't see it in this report, but in our forward thinking and planning, has there been any consideration or thought given to the potential future need for another ice surface, and would Bevan be the place for that?
Through His Worship to Councillor Thorpe, we have, again, through the engagement process, heard of interest, but we have not moved forward on consideration of another rink or another ice surface at the Bevan Park area. The master plan identified the need to fill other niches within the community in the park, but what I can say is communication has occurred with some of the junior clubs that use Bevan Park as their home to utilize the training facility and the sport field, indoor sport field, and some of the other upgrades to complement their current programs.
All right, thanks very much.
Councillor Manley.
Sorry. Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I'm curious, so just when we go back to page 24 of this, there's this large grayed out area for the Bevan Master Plan implementation, that one there. Are these facilities all proposed for inside that area, inside the sort of the rubber walking track?
I believe they are, but I will refer to Ms. Davis to provide further content on the work that was done with the consultant.
Thank you. And through the chair to Councillor Manley, yes, this image is purposefully a little bit, it gives us potential, right? We have not ascertained in which location we would be placing the facilities, but it would be within this area, within the park. There is so much potential, and we need to find the right locations for these facilities. As Ms. Osborne recognised, that they only take up 2.5 acres of this 15-acre area, so there's much potential there for other landscaping around that, and we just didn't want to indicate that we were any further down the design road than we actually are. So these are the high-level concepts that we have developed. They could go anywhere within that area, and we may choose to surround them with a rubberized walking track and many other different types of landscaping elements as well.
Okay, and I imagine the types of buildings that have been proposed in here are quite a bit less expensive than solid structures with solid roofs and...
Yeah, through the chair, that's absolutely right. So we did look at 3 different built construction types. One of them was a more traditional brick and mortar type construction type, and the other one was a sprung structure, which is like a fabric around a rigid frame, or also an air supported structure like a tennis bubble.
And with the proposal for an amphitheater, I imagine you'd be looking at something where there's a natural slope. There's a few natural slopes here. Was that kind of the concept, or?
I'm sorry, I didn't follow the question.
Oh, well, for the amphitheater, there's a proposed amphitheater. Would it be like somewhere with a natural slope, like we've got lots of natural slopes in here, like grassy areas with a stage down below, or?
Absolutely right, through the chair, yes. An amphitheatre, we would absolutely look to use some natural grades within there potentially, yes. To develop.
Okay. I know when I go through Bowen Park, I see that amphitheater is well used. There's weddings there. We have the concerts in the park, but other people book it for their own little entertainment kind of things. Is that, how much is that space booked currently? Do you know, do you have an idea of?
I don't, through the chair again, I don't have the exact information on the bookings, but I do know that it is a popular site, as you say, for weddings and all of the different types of uses as well, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the idea of amphitheater spaces around the city just for those kind of cultural aspects, but also for those kind of personal uses, family gatherings, weddings, that kind of thing. So, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you. A number of months ago, we had a company come and do a presentation about a possible tennis, pickleball, soccer bubble. I'm just wondering where that discussion went. Just as minimal. I mean, it was just that this is possible.
Yeah, through the chair, we, I think it's best to say that we've progressed with anything in that area.
Okay.
The pickleball courts.
Of course, they're finished now.
Have recently opened.
Yes.
And from my experience of going through the park just last night, we're in full activation. So definitely fulfilling the need in that area, but we haven't proceeded with any.
Okay. And I just to say that on the radio this morning, all they talked about was the weekend events. So it was fabulous to hear, and just everyone very excited, so it was good. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? Not seeing any questions. Next steps. Councillor Hemmons. Sorry.
This may be inappropriate, you can rule me out of order, but I'd like to move option 1, which includes funding for the South End Community Centre.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Perino. Discussion, Council. Councillor Hemmons?
Well, sure. Great presentation by staff. Obviously, lots to consider. I was really glad to hear, to have it confirmed, we have reserve funding for that process with the Public Works Yard. We know our CMP, we've got a little bit of money there. We might need more to do that process. I do think we should begin the process for the South End Community Centre. It would be wise, just given obviously the needs stated and identified at this table and by staff. So that's my rationale. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Your Worship, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Lindsay.
Certainly happy to take motions from council at any time, but we do have a few more slides that we wanted to go through with you this morning. But
I'm happy to wait.
Good.
Your Worship, I think it was seconded, so it is kind of on the floor right now. Mr. Lindsay.
We'll leave it on the floor.
We could just have it on pause for a moment while Mr. Lindsay continues going through the slides, and then we can come back to the motion that is on the floor. Thank you.
Ms. Mercer.
I'll make it quick.
We've got too many players on the stage today.
Just a quick note on other future needs. So there is a variety of existing assets in the city that will need a substantial investment over the coming years. And the 20-year investment, or the asset management update that was presented to council in 2023 did identify a growing funding gap, especially when it comes to facilities. So that's just something to keep in mind while we're considering these projects. There are things that'll pop up from time to time that will need investment as well. And some of those projects are listed in this on this slide. So next steps. So in summary, staff are recommending the following as next steps. So first is to update the debt management policy to allow long-term borrowing when within the approval-free liability zone. Recognize that the Public Works Yard update, RCMP detachment expansion, and the South End Community Center projects are the current priority projects for staff to focus on. Complete the integrated project delivery, or the IPD work, on the Public Works Yard update project, and return to council in early 2026 with better project scope, detailed design, and costing. Proceed with the IPD work for the RCMP detachment expansion project, and return to council in early 2027 with design and costing information. The next recommendation is to allocate $2 million to advance the work on the capital development plan for the South End Community Center, and staff would come back to council in early 2027 to present the design and costing on that. The funding for the $2 million would come from reserves, specifically $675,000 from the Growing Communities Fund and $1.325 million from the Special Initiatives Reserve. So the committee should note that the $1.325 million from the Special Initiatives Reserve comes from the $4 million that was allocated from the 2024 surplus that was set aside for council priority projects. And the $4 million was most recently discussed as a funding source for the Loudon Park Improvement Project if additional funding was needed. So if that project was to advance, only $2.675 million would be available if additional funding was needed for that project. And the last recommendation is to defer any consideration on the Waterfront Walkway and the Bevan Park Master Plan implementation projects until the 3 current priority projects have completed design and costing, and that would likely happen in 2027. This is just a graphical view of the potential project borrowing timeline for all the projects, along with their estimated cost ranges. And this shows how they could be staggered for borrowing purposes. So now it's your opportunity to ask us questions, provide feedback, and give us direction based on the information you've heard today. So we'll be happy to hand it over to you and answer any more questions that you have.
Thank you very much. And just to be clear for the benefit of council, option 1, which is the recommended motion, as opposed to option 2, which is provide direction, incorporates the next steps that we've just reviewed, correct, from staff's perspective, just to be clear. I'm not functioning on all cylinders this morning, so I just want to make sure everybody's all on board as to what's being proposed in the motion. Councillor Hemmons, anything further? Councillor, excuse me, Councillor Gesselbrock.
Did you move the full recommendation or just number 1? Okay, I was wondering to just move to take him in seriatim, just the components of it, because I'd like to vote in favor for a couple of them, but there's one that I'm not. So I don't know if you need a motion to take it in seriatim.
No, you don't need a motion for that. You can just vote on them separately, yeah.
Okay.
All right, we'll deal with 1, which is direct staff to update council's debt management policy, allow long-term borrowing without electoral approval when the city is within the allowable assent-free borrowing limit. Do you wish to say anything to that one, Councillor Gesselbrock?
I think aligning our policy with the provincial legislation makes sense to me. Thank you.
Councillor Perino?
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're just dealing with number 1 of option 1, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. No, I have a question about the second one, so I'll wait.
Okay. Councillor Manley, wish to speak to item 1 of option 1?
Yeah, thank you. I agree that we should align our policy with provincial legislation, but I also think that we should be talking about referendum for some of these things. We have a lot of projects on the table here, actually going far beyond what the borrowing capacity would be under that legislation, and I think it's important to get feedback from citizens on these kind of projects. And I know we do have an election coming up in 2026, and it's an opportunity to actually hear from citizens about what kind of projects they'd like to see prioritized as well. And I think that just strengthens the resolve of council to move things forward. Thanks.
Thank you. I mean, passage of this motion in no way restricts that discussion, which I expect we're going to have at length between now and next year.
Yep.
Any further discussion on item 1 of option 1? All those in favor? And any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is direct staff to proceed with a capital development, project execution plan and costing for the South End Community Centre, and allocate $2 million to undertake this work, funded by $675,000 of the Growing Communities Fund and $1,325,000 from the Special Initiatives Reserve. Anyone care to move that? Councillor Hemmings?
Your Worship, they're all on the table right now?
Yes, sorry, yes.
Yeah, so you're just voting on them separately. Yeah.
Thank you. Keep me on track, Ms. Gurry. Discussion on this one. Councillor Perino?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a very, very quick question. So the idea with putting this $2 million away, which is, we do not have to tax for it, we have that money so we can go forward with it, that is to get the design and a basic plan to move forward. Is that correct? So it is then shovel ready, is that right?
I will let Ms. Popelson take that, but it would have design and costing to a certain level at that point.
Yeah.
Okay. Through the chair, through Your Worship, to Councillor Perino, this allows us to advance and get more fine-tuning on the broad numbers we gave you.
Yes.
Might not be the final, but it gets us a lot closer to that, exactly for the purpose you're saying, for funding from grants and other mechanisms.
The idea that we could get that done and then begin to apply for the grants is so important. And this, you know, as I said before, this is a gift to the South End community that will continue to give to their families for decades to come. This is such an important project, so I'm very glad to see this and hope it passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gusselbrook and Councillor Manley.
Thanks. For me, I think this substantially moves this project forward. Really, the decision point won't really be happening till 2027, which is the next council. I think probably that $2 million and how far it gets us into the design process could be broken up a little bit more, so that we can have more discussion on sort of the strategy of how we want to go forward, potentially with phasing. I guess suffice to say, I don't think committing this funding right now is going to substantially speed up this project, whether it's now or if we do this in 3 months. And I think that $1 million or $1.3 million from the Special Initiative Reserve could be used elsewhere. There are some things on the docket, and I think there's some priority things for consideration around land acquisition that I'd like to just keep that cash at hand in the next few months before committing it. So, and especially given it going to the next council for decision anyhow, I think there's some things that we could get done this term. So I'm not in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Manley, then Councillor Brown.
Just a question, would this money, is this for like an IPD process for a validation of costs, or is it just a preliminary step towards that?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Manley, at this point we're evaluating the IDP process parameters to see whether that is the most effective one for this particular project, but the intent is, regardless of the process we use, we come up with more refined costing on different design options. So there's concepts already, so it's taking it a step further with those options, including potentially options for phasing for council, and getting us to a point where we can actually have discussions about the agreements with partnerships and other revenue sources, grants, as well as advancing conversations with some of the different uses that we've mentioned here. Thank you.
We're also, I think we're just in the process of amenity cost charges, like changing that whole process, where this, like, we're going to have a huge development in the South End with sandstone, hundreds of new homes, and we're in the process of evaluating what we're going to be doing with amenity cost charges, which would help to pay for this with that new development. Is that correct?
Through the chair, I might defer this one through to my colleagues here to answer, because I don't have the history on that. Thank you.
Ms. Mercer.
Thank you. So that process is we're undertaking that. Depending on when this project would start, it would depend on how much how much we got in contributions to actually make a difference to that, to the cost, to what we would need to borrow or other funding sources for this project. So if it was, 15 years out, you obviously potentially would have more money in that pot to put towards this project. But if it was in, 5 years, you may not have a lot of money to put towards that. But it is a conceivable funding source. But it depends on when this project goes forward and how much we've collected over that time.
And farther down the road. So spending this money would get us closer to being able to have a shovel-ready project for grants for potential senior levels of government interest, correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Manley, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is a really important project, given the size and scope of the development we're going to see in the south end, and we're going to be doing it at some point rather than another. And I know that it's not immediate, but I think continuing to plan for it is important. Yeah. Thank you.
Through your worship to Councillor Manley, Mr. Sims actually may help provide a bit more definition on the amenity costs. Thank you.
Worship Council may recall we've got a draft amenity cost charge bylaw in working through the process, as Ms. Mercer said, and this is one of the projects that is being considered in that bylaw. For clarity.
Okay, so development in the south end after that amenity cost charge, if that is approved and by council, development in the south end would help to pay for this project.
Your worship, I'm not overly familiar with the details, but the ACC, the amenity cost charge bylaw, is citywide, so any development that occurs contributes to, similar to DCC's, but contributes to the amenity cost charge reserves, which then would be used for this project, among others.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Your Worship. So I'm supportive of the additional next works. I'm not supportive of the funding sources. And being 2 months away or less from budget discussions and having a full kind of picture of what the next year looks like and the 5-year financial plan, I would rather the conversation of funding sources sort of be deferred to that. I don't think that the 2 months or the 6 weeks is going to result in much of a difference in terms of the timeline. I was hopeful that the timeline for this would actually be sooner, but I understand the realities as well. So I won't be supporting the motion as is, and I would prefer that conversation happen in a couple of months' time. Not to not proceed, but to just identify where that 1.325 might come from, and maybe it does come from this, but I just want to see it in the whole picture of all the different things that we're funding. And the reason for that is that's one of our most flexible funding sources, and so I'm always hesitant around tapping into the most flexible funding source if there may be other direction council wants to provide that doesn't eat up those funds, that allows us to be very adaptable. Thanks. I'm not going to move to defer, but I just won't be supporting as is.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the concerns that Councillors Brown and Gesselbrock have raised around this. If we were private developers, what we'd be thinking about is the fact we have millions of dollars worth of dirt in the south end that are growing blackberries and weeds at the present time and not doing anything for anybody, except maybe providing a little refuge for the odd bit of wildlife. We would be getting on with things. With respect to the funding, I trust staff on this. This is staff's recommendation as to the source of funding for this initiative. The South End Community Centre has been a long promised amenity. Staff have reminded us again today in response to my question that Oliver Woods is full. The need is not going to diminish. I don't think we'll see a great deal of people immigrating from Nanaimo away. So my view is there is no significant value or good reason to delay this further. Let us get on with it, then we'll have something concrete in front of us and we can make firm decisions at that point. But I'm certainly enthusiastic about this, well, I'm enthusiastic about the whole motion for that matter. But this in particular, it is time to get on with this. Councillor Manley, wish to say something further?
Yeah, I'm just curious if staff have any ideas of what other pots of money we could dive into for this.
Ms. Mercer.
Thank you, Your Worship, to Councillor Manley. Our options are, we could tax for it. We could use council's SIR fund. We could also use the general capital reserve that we have, although we do like to keep a bit of money aside for any anomalies that come up or projects that go over budget, but it is an option. So those are kind of your options as other funding sources.
Okay, thanks.
Seeing no further discussion, motions on the floor. All those in favor, Councillors Hemmons, Mayor Krogh, Councillor Prino, Councillor Manley, Councillor Armstrong. Those opposed, Councillors Gesselbrock and Brown. Motion carries. Thank you. We're on to number 3 of the option 1, endorse the next steps - roadmap for building for the future, as outlined in the report titled Nanaimo Builds for the Future Plan Update, dated 2025 September 17th. It's on the table. Discussion? Councillor Gesselbrock?
Thanks. So just for clarity, the next steps basically is the report. There's not like there's not an itemized list. Endorse next steps roadmap for building the future as outlined in the report. Or is there like a section in there?
Thank you, Your Worship. Now they've just brought up, I was just going to ask for them to bring it. Sorry, this is the best summary of what we were referring to in next steps?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, to speak to that. Yeah, I mean, there are a few things here that I don't agree on. I mean, we just voted again. I just voted against the $2 million to be allocated to advancing the capital development plan of the South End Community Center, which I believe that it's a great project. I don't think that we need to do in the next 3 months that allocation of the money, and should wait for budgeting. For budget discussions, and then the RCMP detachment expansion to proceed. I think I'd like to see just sort of the background on the justification for the particular location and the strategy for concentrating in one spot, and those are the main challenges I have with the plan as thus explained. So I'll be voting not in favor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Your Worship. I will be voting in favor, just because I think, especially with the South End Community Center, I do think it's a priority project, and I can get over my misgivings about the budget source. With that said, I am just worried about the IPD process, in the sense of obviously there's no firm commitments here, but you are front-loading costs significantly, and I just encourage the reflection that I hope everybody is very serious about wanting to see these get out to, whether it's referendum, AAP, or committing some way financially to them, because I do think there is a window when you complete these processes that you need to build in, and I think there's a long history of all local governments where they do a lot of this work and then it sits on the shelf for 10 years. Then construction plans need to be updated, and then there's new community input, and you're essentially rescoping and spending hundreds of thousands more dollars. So happy to see them advance. I think it also generates good information to bring to the public if the funding source needs to be, have a electoral assent. But I'm just trying to be very mindful that these are hundreds of millions of dollars that we're committing to, so.
Thank you very much, Councillor Manley. Sorry.
Am I alive? I'm alive? There we go, okay. Yeah, thank you. I note in the second bullet point that at that point, council will be able to consider borrowing under the recently amended assent-free rules, with borrowing starting in the fall of 2026. I think I have the same, just because we have so many things on the table, that I want to be talking about referendum, and because we're so close to an election, the costs of a referendum are not going to be as onerous on taxpayers. We have a lot going on here. I mean, it feels to me like the RCMP detachment expansion has so many variables right now, you know, potential variables to it that we're far from that part of the process where we want to spend several $1 million on advanced design. But I will be supporting it because I do think that these projects need to go forward. I just want to make sure that when it comes to evaluating how we're going to determine what process we use for paying for them and how we involve the public, that we have that discussion before we make those decisions. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. We've put a tiny deposit on the holiday. We're not necessarily committed to going. The motion's on the floor. All those in favor? Councillors Hemmons, Mayor Crowe, Councillor Perino, Councillor Brown, Councillor Manley, Councillor Armstrong. Those opposed? Councillor Gesselbrock. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate staff's work on this. This has been quite the presentation this morning. The next item is B, council expenses for the 6 months ending 2025, June 30th. Ms. Mercer.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report provides a summary at June 30th, 2025, of the year-to-date expenses for each member of council. The information is compiled all year and is included in the Statement of Financial Information, or the SOFI report, at the end of the year. Apparently there has been some confusion about why some councillors have different budgets than others. So Ms. Fulla has that information, and she'll just give you a brief overview of why some councillors have a different budget than others.
Ms. Fulla.
Good morning. So for the draft budget, we did budget the same for all your conferences and seminars except for internet. Some councillors had indicated that they would not be seeking reimbursement for internet, so we didn't budget for that for those councillors. For final budget, mindful of the high property tax increase, we did come back to Mayor and Council, and since some of you had indicated you were not going to be attending FCM, to help reduce property taxes for those councillors that had indicated they were not going to be attending, we reduced the budget to help lower the property tax increase. So that's why not every councillor has the same expense budget. It was based on what you were indicating that you thought you would spend this year, just to be mindful of the property tax increase and not budget for things that we didn't anticipate needing the funding for.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Manley?
Thanks. Yeah, so the total budget is $76,100. And what was it prior to this adjustment that we did?
Through the chair to Councillor Manley, I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact amount, but I believe the budget dropped by about 33,000. It was a significant amount.
Right. And I think prior to that, even like considering the escalating costs of hotels and airfare and actually the price of going to FCM or UBCM, that the budget wasn't adequate for all of us to attend those things anyway. Is my recollection. It hadn't been in previous years, so.
Through the chair to Councillor Manley, each year we do work with staff in legislative services. We do look at where the councillors or where the conferences are anticipated to be held, and the budget is updated based on the location.
Okay,
Just to add to that, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Manley, I do look after the annual budgets for this cost center, and we did work significantly with Donna the year before last because of the significant increases in hotel costs, et cetera, even just in Vancouver.
Right.
So we did adjust the budget accordingly. So.
Okay, yeah, because it looked like we'd all blown the budget the years before, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perino, then Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you. So what I'm hearing is that because one of our councillors chose to go to the FCM, the difference between 8,100 to 14,100, that's the cost difference of just attending that one conference, basically.
Through the chair to Councillor Perino. Yes, Councillor Eastmere had indicated that she was attending FCM, so she had a $6,000 budget to attend that conference. For other councillors that indicated they weren't attending, that $6,000 was removed from.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then my next question is, if I might, so the budget variance is that we still have $55,126.47. So obviously we've got UBCM and we'll have some other events that we have to attend before the end of the year. There should be some surplus at the end. Again, the budget variance should be in favor. What happens to that money?
Through the chair to Councillor Perino, any budget surplus goes to the city's surplus.
Good, good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, it's just a report. Thank you very much. I hope that the ratepayers will be happy so far this year. The next is C, financial results for the 6 months ending 2025, June 30. Ms. Mercer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report provides the committee with the financial results of the city at June 30th, and it includes information relating to both day-to-day operations as well as projects. So I'll just give a slight overview of the operating results and then touch a little bit on projects. So at the end of quarter 2, the projected surplus at the end of the year is, we're estimating at approximately $4,276,000 for all 3 funds. Of course, the majority of that comes from the general fund, which we're estimating at just over $4.1 million. Attachment A gives a brief description of any variances over $100,000, and Attachment B gives an overview of all the operating variances for all departments. For the general, what's driving the surplus mostly is the RCMP contract, as it's expected to be under budget due to member vacancies, as well as position vacancies throughout the city are also contributing to surplus, as we have multiple vacancies throughout the city. Do keep in mind that we did budget a negative contingency for vacancies, and we budgeted $750,000, so that will offset some of those vacancies. And then we had additional investment income and some grants in lieu of taxes revenue that was higher than anticipated. Oops, that's me, sorry. For projects, this report gives you the status of projects for 2025, and they're broken down into complete or substantially complete, in progress, not started, or on hold or delayed. The total project budget was $133.9 million. We've spent or committed 75.7 to date, and that leaves $58.2 million left to be spent for the rest of the year. 14% of our projects were complete, 58% in progress, 25 not started, and 3% are on hold or delayed. And Attachment C gives you an overview of the project summary for each division and highlights the bigger projects within each area. So staff are here to answer any questions you may have regarding this report.
Councillor Manley.
Thank you. Yeah, just noting like the status for sewer and water at June 30th were deficit, but I imagine that that's because a lot of projects are kind of front loaded for the beginning of the year. We've done a lot of work. People have been dealing with a lot of torn up streets, etc. But that work is slowing down for the second half of the year, and that's why we expect a surplus at the end?
For projects, a lot of the work happens during the summer.
Okay.
So this is at June 30th, so a lot of the work will be July, August, September. So that is often why you see some lower numbers for not started. They'll happen during the months that we have really good weather to do the projects.
Okay. You know, I'm just wondering about at June 30th, just on the front page, it says sewer and water we're at a deficit, but we're expecting a surplus. So
Yeah, so with sewer and water, we're always behind on our billings. So because it's a moving scale, so we are always trying to accrue. So by the end of the year, we should be caught up and then have an accrual for the last little bit. So it's timing.
okay. People are paying for their summer watering now. I just saw my water bill. Trying to keep everything alive. Whoops.
Thank you very much. If no questions from Ms. Mercer, we have no other business. And I'm going to assume, unless some staff member has written down a question period, which I doubt very much is the case, a motion for adjournment would be appreciated. Moved Councillor Hemmons, seconded Councillor Perino. All